And I mean, I don't stand there watching because I try to
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. It's with huge pleasure that I have to introduce our next speaker here. Justin Schmidt grew up amongst the weeds, wildflowers, and insects of central Pennsylvania, and it's no wonder that this gave him his interest and love of insects. His college interest in chemistry then blended with those and led to him eventually steered towards the chemical ecology of stings and venoms of wasps, ants, and bees. Don't you love it? Wasps, ants, and bees, everything that's nasty, but fascinating nevertheless. This led to him producing a exceedingly entertaining, I have to say, personally I found it so, book called The Sting of the Wild, which introduced people to the actual pain of stings. And if you haven't seen it, his exquisite descriptions of the pain are delightful. Anyway, he currently investigates the biology, medical importance and impact of bees, wasps and ants on people and our structures at the Southwestern Biological Institute and University of Arizona. Through all of this work, he's produced 195 publications, 20 book chapters, 3 edited volumes, several hundred scientific presentations, and was awarded the 2015 Ig Nobel Prize in Physiology and Entomology. So today, he's looking at the biology of bees. There are 20,000 worldwide species, and they are crucial pollinators of the world's plants. We literally depend on them. He'll be describing the life histories of biologies of the families and species that we find around us. We'll also look at the introduced honeybee. Without further ado, please, Justin Schmidt.
Let Chris give the talk. He's much better than I am. I hope you can all hear me. I'll try to yell. If I use the microphone, then we can't record it. So I'll just try to yell. And if I put everybody to sleep well, then I guess I've done my job. So raise your hand if you think bees are cool. Good, we're in the right audience. I think they're really cool. And one of the nice things about bees is most people think honeybees. Okay, yawn, yes, we all know about honeybees. But look at this, we've got 20,000 species. It's more robust and hairy than wasps, especially on the thorax. You get this long skinny thing that has wings and flaps around it. Say, what is it? Is it a bee or is it a wasp? The way you can tell the difference is bees always have hair on their bodies. Wasps usually don't. And say, well, why do bees be hairy and wasps don't? If you think about the biology of bees, what do bees pollinate plants? What do plants do? They make pollen. What is pollen? Pollen is sticky. How do you stick pollen on something slippery? You don't. So you need hairs. And that's why all bees, except there's always somebody that breaks the rule. And you guess who those would be? Think birds. Who breaks the rules about nesting in birds? I would think of cuckoos. They don't do the work. It's cuckoo bees. And they don't have hairs on their body because they don't do any work. They just steal the work of regular bees. So that's the one exception. What I'm going to talk about mostly today is, we all know about the honeybee. That's one species out of 20,000. But here, where are we? We're in Cochise County. Cochise County is the richest county in the U.S. for bee species. Probably 350 species here. That's just amazing. That's more than the whole northeast of the U.S. combined. It's the richest in Arizona, is the richest in number of bees in all of the states of the U.S. And this area, Cochise County, particularly around Guadalupe Canyon, the areas around Douglas, have probably more species of bees than any other single spot anywhere in the world. So we're really in the bee capital of the world, pretty much right here. So what I'm going to try to do today is go through just the general basic biology of some of the variety of bees. There are a whole lot of different bees. I can't remember all of these things, so I'll have to look at the screen periodically. Let's see, how did it get? Should have been something in between. Yes, there we go. Pollinators, this is one of the many families of bees. There's 330 species of Pollinators. Ilea is a yellow-faced bee, so if you see a flower on this bee with a big black face, there's a big yellow patch right in the middle of it, that's a yellow-faced bee. They're cute little native bees, they're all solitary bees. None of these things, but look at it, there's a lot of them, 590 species. They nest in soils and in stems. One of them is in golf courses, so every so often I get this go, there's bees in my golf course, oh, what do I do? Ignore them, they're not gonna hurt anybody. They're pollinating the lovely flowers around nearby. But sometimes people get all worried about that. So there is one of these, but even if you grab it, I don't think they can physically sting you, they're so small. Or maybe if you find, see, there's a tender spot right there, let's see if I get it just right, and maybe it'll sting you. Maybe. That's how hard you have to work to get them to sting you. So this is a picture of the clear, you see the bright white face on the thing. So the next family is an Adrenidine. Wish we could get rid of that nasty setting of it. Adrenal, 1,000 species. My goodness, that's a quarter as many as there are mammals in the whole world. One little genus of bees. Perdita. Perdita is one of my favorites because Perdita, turns out, we all remember Richard Nixon. He was our president. He had an uncle. An uncle described almost all those 617 species of Perdita. Timberlake was his name. He was working out in California. And at 92 years old, people would go and visit him. They'd be looking through this microscope and say, well, my vision isn't so good anymore. So I only look at the big bees, the ones that are nearly half an inch long rather than the ones that are quarter inch long. But he was Richard Nixon's uncle, so I thought that was kind of an interesting little social folk tale about bees and politics. So I'm not going to go any further on that issue. So this is the Andrena. You can see it's just kind of a striped, pretty bee. And there's another one down the bottom. This is what they do. You'll find an open patch of soil. And they kind of dig down and make a burrow. And they often have this tunnel up above. This tumulus, it's called. We've never figured out, we people, we all work on these things. Why do they have this? My pet hypothesis that I have is that they have these because ants are marauding around. Ants are trouble. No matter who you are, from an elephant to the smallest thing on earth, ants are trouble. I mean, I happen to love ants, but ants go down, they can cause trouble for the bees. I think that's something, the ants kind of wandering around here. Ooh, berry, well, I'll go around that berry, that sort of thing. So that's my prevailing thought on that. There's a close-up of one of them. Here's the Perdita, which Timberlake, as I mentioned earlier, was describing. They're cute little yellow bees, striped. They're quite small in general. As you notice, most of these are on flowers. So the reason we have so many flowers is because we have so many bees. Like honeybees are only good for pollinating about a quarter of the flowering plants. So they're real good for like sunflowers and almonds and things that we eat, watermelons and that sort of thing. But for most of the ornamentals that you have, like all your eggplants and your peppers and your tomatoes and these sorts of things, honeybees can't pollinate, so it wouldn't have any of those if it weren't for native bees. In the case of those, the carpenter bees, bumblebees, and squash bees, and things of that sort. So these are sweat bees. Sweat bees are probably the most numerous of all the families of bees. They have, as you can see, 1,000 species of Lasia blossom. And they all nest in the ground. Some of them will, if you're back east, if anybody grew up in New York or Pennsylvania or Michigan, you're out here sitting in your shady lounge chair, having your favorite beverage by the pool while the kids are splashing around. It's really hot, steamy. You up your beverage here. Ouch! What's that stung me in the elbow? Well, there was a little tiny bee, a little tiny gray bee, 1/4 inch long. It was lapping the sweat in your elbow. When you went up like this, you pinched her. And so she stung you. Said, let me go, I'm harmless, I just want free. So that's where sweat bees come from. They're kind of unusual, and there's been about 7 or 8 reactions throughout medical record of people that get allergic reactions to them. They swell up, get hives or something of this sort. But they're basically generally quite beneficial bees. That's a typical one that I lifted up in the top, and they're kind of small bees. And then you can see that laser gloss on top, lifted on the bottom, but it's a little bit bigger. One of my favorite is Agapostoma. That's another sweat bee. You see these around here once in a while, I say, wow, isn't that a flying jewel? It's beautiful green, often with yellow contrast. They're fairly big bees. They're 1/2 inch long often. Some of them are pure turquoise color, some are pure green, some are the green and yellow. They're actually very spectacular bees. You say, what on earth is this? You know, you think you're in the tropics where you're expecting beautiful things. No, we have them right here. This is basically showing that's the soil surface up there. They dig a burrow down here. There's our little hardworking bee. Off the side, she has a little chamber that she makes around here. And that's her pollen ball. And larva, the baby on the top of it. So that's how they nest. This is one I took in Borneo. I was there too long ago. I wouldn't want to acknowledge how old that is or I am. You can probably tell both from looking at it. That's a new subgenus of sweat bee, which is found nowhere else in the world. I was on Mount Kinabalu. It rains like 400 inches a year. It never stopped. And for 20 minutes it stopped raining. I was looking at this bank up here, like this, of liverworts. Wow, those are kind of interesting. But oh, what's that? So it turned out I got another 20-minute break. And I excavated, and it turned out that this was a sweat bee colony. You see how muddy and yucky that is. It's like clay. You make a pot out of that stuff. And it turns out that this is the pollen ball that they were feeding on. Most pollen is kind of yellow. You think, oh, that poor little larva up there is eating mud. No, it's actually pollen, it's the same color as the mud. Another interesting thing about the bees is it's wet here. How do you not get drowned by it? That's shiny. What's that shininess? They put waxy lipids, oils, on the surface to waterproof it so they can then protect themselves from that 400 inches of rain in here. That's a lot of rain. I wish they'd give us 10% of that per year once in a while. This is just showing the life history of a typical one. Just showing, see, most of the pollen balls we see are kind of yellow. There's the different ages of larvae that are feeding on them. And then this family actually is economically important. We think of pollination as being honeybees. Well, if you read a little further, you'll know, oh, bumblebees, yeah. We can use bumblebees in greenhouses to pollinate peppers and tomatoes. So that's the second agriculturally important bee. This one's probably even more important yet, alkaline bees. You notice, you see up there, that's nice and green. That's called alfalfa. You want alfalfa sprouts for your salad, you gotta grow alfalfa. And growing alfalfa, you have to get alfalfa seed. The way you get them is these bees in here, these alkaline bees. You notice, well, that's kind of weird looking. What's going on there? Turns out they make these little terraces where just dump tons and tons of salt on there. That's the alkali. And the bees like the alkaline soil because it's sterile. There's nothing in there, no ants, no anything in it. Who lives in a salt flat? If you've ever been to Wilcox Playa, walked out a while, you'll see there's no life there except maybe a few dead insects that blew in the wind. Nothing living. So the alkali bees like that area because it's ideal, they're safe. They just take off, fly up, zoom over to the alfalfa field, pollinate the alfalfa. Farmer's happy, he makes a lot of money. We're happy because we have alfalfa sprouts, and the cow's happy because it has alfalfa to eat. So it's a win-win for everybody. So megacarda to leafcutter bees. These are probably the bees that sometimes people don't like. I happen to think they're wonderful. They're quite cute. Again, over 1,000 species of megacarda. They nest in ground, usually in twigs and in holes. You'll see them in hollow, pithy twigs and that sort of thing. And the key characteristic of these is pollen on the underside of its abdomen. You all know where a honeybee carries its pollen? Legs, back legs. They have these big, fat, lumpy wads of pollen on the back of their legs. All bees carry pollen that way, except these megacarda. They carry them on the abdomen. They're a minor aesthetic nuisance for homeowners. Of course, none of us in this audience qualify for that, who want lives with perfect bug-free lives. The bugs are what makes life interesting. I'm not biased. And here's your megacarda. You can't see the pollen, but this next picture, see the whole abdomen is covered with pollen there? That's how they carry it. So if you look at the legs, that nice fat leg, it's just bare leg. They carry it all on the abdomen. Who knows why they do that, but that's, you see a bee and you want to impress somebody that's visiting, oh, that's a leafcutter bee. I didn't know, well, sort of tell them a secret. Because they're the only ones that do that. Leafcutter bees, I think, are really cool. It's fascinating history. You see, they cut the leaf, and then you see her wrapping it up. Then she'll fly back home with it, with this leaf. And then what she does is she lines her cell with the leaf. That's a little drier leaf there. Look at this gooey mess. You didn't have a nice impermeable leaf there. That's all going to drip off, and your young will have nothing to eat. So that's what they use the leaves for. Here's just showing a series of exploded, cut up leaves, and the whole life cycle pretty much there. I like this, it shows it's not just leaves that they cut, sometimes it'll be flowers. So you get these beautiful things of, oh, my favorite rose, it's got holes in it. Ah, you're supporting a nice bee. Be happy. And I was out in Wilcox doing some research a few years back. I put these yellow flags up with particular spots of the research project. I need to find them back. We can see the leafcutter bees found even plastic markers were very suitable for making a nest out. Actually, they're probably better than leaves because they're totally indestructible. They don't pass any water or anything like that. They don't degrade. So they probably appreciate us. I thought that was kind of interesting. Commercially, they have bee hives here. And again, these are used for things like alfalfa and some of the crops, particularly in Alberta, Montana, Idaho, parts of Wyoming, parts of western Washington, areas of the Northwest. They have these huge bee houses and sometimes bee trailers. If you look inside, all of this is areas where the bees have, they put little straws, like a drinking straw, in a hole, and the bees will go in and make their nest in there. And you take the straws out, put them in a cold chamber over winter, and that way you can store them. And then when you want them for your pollinating service the next spring, take them out about 10 or 12 days before the first bloom. They mature, and you can put them back in there, and away you go, you've got the best pollinators around. And there's one of the cute little bees. This is the biggest family, probably, of all the bees, the Apidae. And Apis is, I want to think of Apis mellifera, that's the honeybee. So it got its name after the honeybee. So look at this, we have 469 species of carpenter bees. Wow, that's a lot. Those are the big monster bees. When killer bees first arrived in 1993, I was getting all these, there's killer bees in my backyard. So what time did you get? April, yeah, right. What's it look like? Big black thing, it's eyeball to eyeball buzzing. Yeah, that's a carpenter bee. Be happy. That's pollinating your passion fruit, your tomatoes. Perfectly harmless, don't worry about it. But people thought killer bees, well, they must be big, they must be scary, they must be black. After all, Africa is a dark continent, dark, that means black, right? Well, I think I have a little too much imagination there. No, they're just friendly carpenter bees. Anthophora, digger bees, centris, another digger bees, bombus, almost 250 species of bumblebees. That's the bumblebees. Bumblebees, as most of us know, are now getting endangered worldwide due to excess agriculture, pesticides, and habitat destruction, global warming, and all these things that were dear to our hearts and we're hopefully solving. So bumblebees are really taking it in the ear. But we do actually have a few species of them in Arizona. And look on the bottom, you get honeybees, aphids. I say 9 to 11 species because it depends who's the taxonomist. Some people split them into more species than others. But 9 or 10 is nothing, almost nothing compared to the rest of the bee. We have only just one, just the Western honeybee or the European honeybee here. So this is the carpenter bee. You've all seen them around. They're active from about April until maybe November, and they bore holes in ocotillos, not ocotillos, agaves. Yeah, good, thanks for correcting it. Agaves, sometimes they'll go into sodos, and I don't know if they can make it in yuccas or not. I think they sometimes go into those. They're like stems. I'll have a picture of it. There's head on view. The one really interesting thing, I don't know if you get this species here in Sierra Vista area, but in Tucson we have this one species where the females are the black things that we saw. The males are these great big, cute, fuzzy, flying teddy bears here. And they patrol around in April and May looking for mates. So you'll see this, who's this flying teddy bear, this monstrous teddy bear in my backyard? That's just Big Daddy looking for his girls. He's completely harmless. Here's what they do. This is an agave. You see, these are the larvae. They make individuals. So mom does a good job. She chews up some of this fiber here, makes a little partition. So each one gets its own little bedroom. That way you don't have the siblings all fighting with each other. Of course, siblings don't fight. We all know that. So the cactus bees, diadasia, and they nest in huge numbers, areas like right here. You see all those little piles of brown and a background of tan. Each one's an individual nest. So the interesting thing about them is you say, well, there's thousands of them. There are maybe 10, 20,000, but they're all, each mom does their own job. She doesn't cooperate, doesn't help, not social at all. They're pretty harmless. They are the best pollinators. Prickly pears are wonderful. Prickly pears, choias. Honeybees don't pollinate them. Sorry, folks. We'd have no prickly pears if it weren't for these diadasia or cactus bees. So they're really important in our ecosystems around here. Here's just another shot showing sometimes they have a huge area. And homeowners will call us up and say, oh my goodness, are these millions and millions of bees, I can't get out of the house. I say, oh, they're just harmless, they're just flying around pollinating cacti. I said, if you want the world expert, I'll send them to Stephen Buckman, some of you might have heard of. He's Mr. Native Bee of the southern Arizona. He's been studying these now for 43 years only. So if you have these, call me if you can't remember his name and I can send him up. He goes out and surveys them. He's finding new things every year. Just this year he found a new system of how they communicate where one another is for nesting sites. It's through chemical communication. and they have this scramble competition. It's a free-for-all. When a female comes out of the ground, she mates with only one male and only once. So all the males, of course, pile on this big scrum, trying to think who's going to win. And I guess the lucky winner gets to fly off with her if he's lucky, mate. Then she's nothing to do with the guys out there. Business, none of this silliness of males. They're just in the way. So she gets on with the males, although they fight for a female. This is a congregation of males overwintering. It looks not overwintering, overnighting. It looks like they're all in bright light. That's because you call it something called a flash on your camera. They're all hanging out in this cactus. Nice safe place. Who's going to eat you in there? I'm sure not going to anyway. So digger bees are the centrist. A couple of pictures of those. Here's some. They're big bees. They're 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch long. A nice mating pair. You can see that the male looks slightly different. He has lighter eyes. I had some audience people say, "Why do you always have mating insects? What is it, a pornography show?" No, it's just that these bees are so fast. The only way you can never get a picture of them is when they slow down enough to mate. So if you want a picture of them, you pretty much have to be either really lucky or find a mating pair, which is what I did here. They're sometimes called oil bees. So this is kind of an interesting situation. This is a funny family that most people don't know about. They have 5 little tennis paddles around the central flower, and it's in the family called Pygyaceae. And what they do is they don't produce nectar. Most flowers have nectar, and that's what bees want, this sweet surfing nectar. They produce oil. And oil is essential, again, for like that sweat bee that I was showing you in Borneo. You gotta waterproof yourself. In the desert, it's hot as blazes, you're gonna dry out. In the heat of the summer, in June, in the winter, when you get stopping wet rain, you might get all moldy and fungusy. So they use the oil from this flower, or these flowers of this family. There's a few other families that also have oil. And they line their cells to give them this waterproofing to protect them in the winter, and it protects the moisture in the summer. So it's kind of an interesting sort of situation. These are squash bees. If you like squashes and pumpkins, no pumpkins for Halloween, folks. We just have honeybees. They don't pollinate them. But these are specialist bees that pollinate only squashes, not even watermelons, not even cantaloupes, muskmelons, that kind of thing, just squashes. That's their only, they buffalo gourds, I think they also pollinate. But they're very specific bees. This is a little one, Epinapis. This is a big one, Xenoglossa. You see there, she's bear hugging the big squash flower, taking a break. And they're absolutely essential for the pumpkin business. In fact, if you're into raising squashes, often people who have been around a while make sure there's an area where these bees can thrive, so they can come next year and pollinate your pumpkin. Otherwise, you might have a pretty small crop. This, of course, is our bumblebee. We all know bumblebees. They're large furry bees that have a combination of black bases. They have yellow, red, or white patterns on them. They're in Arizona. We have, see, around here you probably have 1 species in the area of Sierra Vista. But if you go to the top of the Huachucas, we have up to 5 species. That's about the number we have in the state. So that's the one population that we have relatively few of. And I said we had more bees than any other county. Well, not bumblebees. Find more bumblebees in, guess where? Alaska. They like cold weather. There isn't a whole lot of cold weather here in Tucson, in southern Arizona. So they're only way up. You go up to Onion Saddle and the Chiricahuas, there's 5 species there. The Huachucas, I think I found 5 species there. Catalinas have 4. I've never actually been in the Rincon. That's a little too rough hiking for me to get into there. But we have, but they're all up on the very top of the mountain, so you won't see them in town most of the time. So now here's the thing people think about honeybees, aphids. Don't talk about it. I love this. My lovely wife here and I were going to South Africa years ago to study African honeybees, not Africanized. Our idea was to learn how the African people deal with African bees, which are the ancestors of our Africanized bees, which nobody knows how to deal with. I said, well, South Africans are smart enough, they deal with them, so let's go and study them. So we arrived in Johannesburg, got to Pretoria after 20-some hours or whatever on horrible flights. And we went to a Chinese restaurant. This was a fortune cookie that one of us got. I thought it was very, honey is sweet, but the bee stings. And how can you say it in fewer words? Pretty much impossible. And then to make it even better, this is what the other one of us got. Be careful. Bees with honey in their mouths and stings in their tails. So again, the same sort of idea. We love them, but ooh, they sting. So you have this dichotomy. One half our brain says, yeah, they're fuzzy, we love them, they're adorable. Oh my God, I'm afraid of these things. Yes, they sting. That's what they do. They put a stinger in your skin, and the bee escapes and runs away. This is one of the stories where people say, why is the bee committing suicide and doing that? Charles Darwin, the great naturalist of 170 years ago, was pondering this question. His Origin of Species was delayed probably 20 years because of this. It's that how can this be beneficial to honeybees to kill themselves and sting? They can't reproduce. If you're dead like that, they're not going to have any offspring. He said, well, Mendel was contemporaneous, but they didn't know each other. Genetics wasn't known. DNA wasn't known. Nothing was known when Darwin was around. He said, well, maybe if they protect their fellow bees that are relatives of theirs, like sisters, brothers, and mothers and such, maybe that enhances their reproduction. So indirectly, the sacrificial bee will benefit by protecting its relatives, who then get to reproduce and pass along the family lineage. Right on, amazing. This guy had no idea of genetics or anything, but he finally puzzled out the situation. That's basically why they do it. The only reproducing bee in a honeybee colony is the queen. There's 20,000 workers, lose 1, 2, 10, 1,000. Yeah, so what? Queens still reproduce. Lose one queen, you're dead in the water, your genetics stop, period, flat out, end. So it's worth doing this. And the reason you do this is if you sting me, whack, get rid of you. Get 10% of the venom in you. Be a whole lot nicer if you get 90% in it, the other bee, right? So lose the stinger there, in here. In here, you see a big meaty muscle mass. That's the venom gland. It has a nerve center in there, and it wheels the stinger deeper and deeper down into your skin and purges all of the venom. Now we're smart enough, we say, oh, we can scratch that out and get it out. But most animals, they knock the bee off, and then they think, oh, problem solved. Wrong. And the reason the bee wants to get 90% in, it's really hard to sting something. Ever tried to sting through a lizard's scales, or a bird's feathers, or a mammal's hair? It's very, very difficult mechanically doing that. So once you do that, you want to get the maximum punch for your buck. And so that's the main reason they do it. The other reason is on there, they emanate a banana smell. It says, sisters, come here, it is the vulnerable part. This nose is not protected. Let's go and sting the nose of this, whoever it is, person, beekeeper, whatever is causing them trouble. And they attack. As you can see, they mean business. One of those people is me, I forget which one. But we're sort of almost breathing bees in that case. Why are we doing that? We're trying to study some of the genetic differences between Africanized bees and European bees, and that was in Costa Rica with Africanized bees. You can't get that in the US with European bees. It'd be hard pressed to get them that stirred up. This is one of my favorites from local down here in Bisbee. Bees sting 15 in Bisbee, killed dog in Tucson. There's panic, fear. That's what sensationalism originally was when Africanized bees came. Since then, now we've gotten pretty much used to them. You don't hear this much anymore. Somebody got stung on Cochise County. Yeah, well, sorry about that, bad luck. But, we just move on. So they say, what does this woman have to do with Schmidt up here talking about bees? I submit probably nothing. But her editors called me up one day in late June or July, I think it was July, and wanted to interview me. I said, oh my goodness, what magazine are you from? Red Book or Ladies Home Journal or something like that? No, it's Cosmos. I don't know what Cosmos is. So anyway, I asked my student, she said, Cosmos? Wants to interview you, Dr. Schmidt? I said, uh-oh. She said, well, I said, what do you think about that? She called it smut. Oh, I'm in trouble. So I was very nervous when the reporter called me up a couple hours later. I was relieved to find that she wasn't asking me about the latest women's fashion or social trends, because I knew nothing about those. And she was asked how to protect young couples frolicking in the autumn mist from getting stung. So that I could do. So this is a section I always find kind of fun, called myths and voodoos. Insect repellent stuff with BB attack, we've all heard that. You get attacked by bees and spray your teeth or whatever it is, your paw, and they'll go away. You see there, she is looking drum up in the top pictures. The bottom, she's all smiling, spraying. She was a government worker, so you have to have your hand over the off, so you can't be promoting anyone bringing. But anyway, so she's very happy there. It's nonsense. While you're applying the spray, hundreds of more bees will be attacking and stinging. Now sometimes it's good to think, not as a person. We're sometimes dumb about something. Think about the bee. There's this bee. This bee says, I'm willing to die for my queen. You're going to spray something nasty and smelling here, that kind of stuff. Hey, I'm already on a death kamikaze mission. I'm going to kill myself. Smells bad. Well, so what? And so that's the reason it wouldn't work. Why would that work? And the problem is you're trudging along in your backpack. Oh, Lieutenant, get the spray out, start spraying. Meanwhile, if you'd taken off out the door, it'd be 100 or 200 feet away, and the bees will stop chasing you. While you're there futzing around trying to get this cap off and find the stuff and spraying it all. It's just, right here's the colony, right over here, and you're right there. They're saying, there's this big monster, they just keep pouring out at you. So it's actually a very bad thing to do, dumb thing to do, so don't try to use insect spray. Actually, it turned out what she found was useful for, she'd be 300 or 400 feet away from the apiary, and she had this suit on. She wanted to get into her truck, drive back to town. A big clumsy suit on. It's kind of hard to drive. You can't see through this mesh and all. So she'd spray this around. The bees would say, oh, well, I'm still alive. That's a long way away from the hive. She's obviously run away. Ugh, smells bad? Yeah, I'll get out of here. She's learned her lesson, so they leave. So it does work for that. It doesn't work if the colony's right here. And so unless you're a beekeeper trying to get rid of bees, they're buzzing around so you can get back in your truck, I wouldn't advise trying to do that. So the next myth is it's bad to pull a stinger out with your finger. The best way is to use a credit card and scrape it off. Some similar thing. This would keep, never pinch, tweeze, or otherwise attempt to pull stings. It will simply eject the remaining contents of the venom sac. Again, malarkey. The reality is it doesn't matter how you get the stinger out. This was first discovered back in the 1890s by the German researchers, that they have this valve, it's a pumping valve, like a one-way flap. moves up like swimming, you bring your hands up, and you go down like this. The flap goes like this and pushes the venom down. So if it gets like this and you squeeze it, it gets stuck like this and it blocks the venom. So it actually can't put any more down when you're squeezing the venom sac. And empirically, back in 1999 and 2000, a couple of scientists discovered, actually measuring this, that it doesn't matter whether you squeeze it. The only thing that's important is how fast you get it out. So I say just use a fingernail. If you don't have any fingernails, then use your hand to rub it off, or use your teeth to scrape it off, whatever works. Get it off fast. Speed is the only thing that counts. Don't worry about pinching it. That wives' tail is still around. This is another dangerous one. You jump into water, you can escape attacking bees. Wrong. When you stick your nose above water, the bees will attack and sting. So see what happens is bees don't go primarily by sight like we do. They go by mainly odor first and then sight. So you're underwater, and you can see this big shadow. That will be buzzing around looking at the shadow. All that CO2 comes out. Target! And it starts stinging your nose and face. What ended up happening is you end up drowning rather than dying of bee sting. So don't jump into a pool. Very bad idea. Another myth, I can't run into it. My grandson thinks, oh, isn't he cute? I don't want to get him stung up. Well, nonsense again. Most bees will fly to the windowsills and not sting. So what happens is, if there's a bunch of bees attacking me right now, if I just stop moving, they're going to say, there's a light out there. I don't know where I am, but I want out of here. They fly to the light. So if you get down on the floor with the door closed, preferably close the door so nobody comes in. They'll fly to your window, trying to get out. So they won't be stinging you. So run inside and turn off all the lights. Open the blinds so the wind light comes in, and the bees will just sit there and buzz themselves till they die basically of exhaustion. Or you can vacuum them up or whatever you want to do. So what to do if you're buzzed by a stinging insect? You freeze and hold your breath. The reason I said that is the bees, unlike us, we go by vision and we go by hearing. The bees go by smell. So if you smell first, vision second. There's nothing to smell. I'm not breathing. Most of us can hold our breath for 30 seconds. If we're not moving, they don't see anything. So what you do is freeze, momentarily hold your breath, look around, where's the insect? If it's just one, you can then walk away. Look for other buzzing insects nearby. If others are present, you just lower your head. You're just going to walk away like this. Try not to flap or anything like that. You don't want to be visible. You want to make it so they don't really notice where you are. And you're not threatening. If you're stung, hold your breath and walk away where the nest might be. Walking along a trail, and I came past this big old sycamore tree, and I'm the third one in line. The third one in line is usually the bad one. The first two are the ones that rile them up. Oh, they're coming out of that. And walk away, not towards the bees. You want to figure out where they are. Go away. But if I walk back here, then I'm in trouble again. So you don't want to do that. We stung several times, Laurie has, and run! Because if you're stung several times, you're definitely near a colony. It's definitely going to be attacking you. You want to get out of there as fast as you possibly can. Running is the way to do it. Once safe, then you can remove the stinger, so don't worry about that. Don't swat or flap, because again, I said, threatening things to them are breath. Nose in the colony like a bear, bad news. Flapping paws, tearing apart the hive, that's bad news. And so if you take away the two cues, the breath and the movement, then you're in a much safer position. how to treat a sting. Just scratch it off if it's present. Nothing more really needs to be done. You can reduce the pain of the sting site by placing a poultice of ice. What am I thinking? Salt. And you can use ice water, tea, almost anything to make it kind of a paste. Just blop it on. We have no idea why it works, but it works. You know, some people, old wives' tales had pneumonia, they had tobacco juice. Who's got tobacco juice around? I certainly don't. But now just salt works really nice and well. And note what species stung you. If you have an allergic reaction, if it has a stinger in you, it's a honeybee. If it doesn't, it's a wasp or an ant. That's about mascot, run as fast as possible. Away from the bees. Hold your hands over your face like this and run. I don't run very well anymore. But you hold your hands over your face, you say, why do you do that? Well, you can see through the cracks between your fingers enough to not stumble into a tree or something like that. And what you're doing is you're bouncing off your hand, maybe stinging the back of your hand, which is a whole lot better than stinging your eyes. You can focus on your eyes and see the black pupil. We don't know how they do that, but they know where your eyes are. That's where they want to sting. You don't want your eyes stung. Bad news. Back of your hand is okay. So if you're doing that, you're protecting yourself. Once you get from me outside that door there, I'm probably reasonably safe. I'll survive. But if I have my hands on flapping away, I might go down because I get too many stings in my eye. Then I'm down in the ground. Now what do I do? I can't see. I'm in pain. I'm in real trouble. Then you run into the nearest building or vehicle, or just run as fast and as far as possible. The reason you go into the building, like I said, the bees that follow you will go to the windows and they'll stop attacking and no more can come in. A vehicle is the same sort of principle. They go to the window and that kind of thing. You're out in the middle of nowhere, like you're hiking in the Huachuca Mountains, and just run and hope it out to get distance. This is a counterintuitive thing to most people. Say run towards people. Oh, I'm endangering them. Well, you're endangering a whole lot more if you run away. Say I was coming by here and this colony came after me. There were a couple of people behind me. There were a couple of people out in front of me, you know, wherever they are. And if I run away from them back this way, and there are people ahead of me, say I was the third one, the lagger, I've gone a little slower than they are. They're up here, and if I'm running here, and I go down, they got to go by this colony right here to try to rescue me. That's tough to do. Whereas if I run after them like this, and then I go down, then they can come and drag me to safety. You say, well, people aren't willing to get stung like that. Wrong. There's time and time again. There's examples of people who will risk their lives to drag a fellow person to safety in that case. If I'm over there and they're over here and there's this colony of 20,000 bees stinging, they probably can't rescue me. So if I run towards them, then they can rescue me. And they'll feel better and you'll be alive. So don't worry, it's counterintuitive. That's what you should do. What not to do, as I said, flap and flail at the bees, jump into a swimming pool or water, stand your ground, I'm tough. Well, bad idea. Or choose not to run into a building because my mother-in-law is in it. We wish, most mother-in-laws wish that would be the case. I run around in circles. There was this gal in Texas who was running around in circles. She kept running around and the bees were attacking her. And then she finally just sat down in the tailgate of a pickup truck and said, well, if the good Lord wants me to go this way, I guess I will. It turned out that her son-in-law was in the house, a big strapping guy of 220 pounds. I said, oh my goodness, my mother-in-law's sitting out there going to get killed. So he rushes out of the house, picks her up, takes her into the house. he gets 100 or so stings, she's alive. She would have been dead if she just sat there. I think the good Lord would rather have her in the house with her son-in-law and alive than out there in the tailgate of the truck. So people do dumb things, don't think too much sometimes. Less thinking is better. So importance of bees, they pollinate. Every third bite of our food comes from bees. And it's the most interesting part. The things that aren't pollinated are things like wheat, rice, barley. Well, barley is maybe interesting, but you know, the main starches that we have, all the good things, the fruit and the veggies and all this, pretty much all of that is pollinated by bees in one sort or another. Bees make life beautiful. You can see flower gardens here. There's a plug for the reason for flowers. My good friend and colleague Steve Buckman wrote this book. It's a very popular book. And the reason you see all these gorgeous flowers out here is not because they want to please us, because they want to make the bees come to pollinate them. So that's the reason of flowers, is for pollinate, not just bees, butterflies, hawk moths, hummingbirds, you know, bats, a few other insects will sometimes come too. Of course, that beautifies our life. This is one of the problems that we have with bees nowadays. Costa Rica, where I did some work, 1972, there were 70 species of bees in that area. 1996, 28 species. From 72 to 96, we lost 90% of the bees. And they're just disappearing due to habitat loss. In their case, the main culprit was they brought in this buffalo grass relative called Huagua, which is a big grass from the African savanna, and it burns and it kills the forest, it kills everything. It's hot, it flames up above the ceiling. I've seen it, it just works everything, just kills everything native, including all the bees and all their flowers. So that's one of the big problems they have there. What we're having with fires in the West right now is doing the same sort of thing in much of our habitat. How to help the bees? Well, simple little things like you have a yard, you have a dead branch on a tree, leave it there. It's nesting sites for the bees. They'll go in there and they'll nest in there. This is a picture of a pale birdie from Tucson area. And there's lots of nice little crevices and cavities in there where bees can nest. They need some place to nest. You can set up a bee house here in your backyard, which will attract the leafcutter bees and several others. That kind of thing, help the pollinator. My favorite is you can plant native plants. I mentioned native plants, not these exotic things like oleander, which kills everything from insects that eat them to giraffes in the Tucson Zoo. The nasty sort of plants, or bougainvillea, which is very pretty, and it's toxic, nothing really eat it. So this is a desert poppy, I think they call it Calstromia. They're quite common right around here. They're low-growing things, wonderful source of pollen for the bee. In the spring, you have penstemon, which is a native, quite a nice thing, and desert lavender, which is kind of interesting. My wife calls them July 4th plant. When we get our first July 4th rain, they have seeds that are in here pretty tight and compressed. When we get wet, they send the seed, they pop and send the seeds out to disperse. Quite a nice plant. This is our milkweed. They not only help the pollinator, but they particularly help monarch butterflies, which are, I think they were just listed as threatened.
In danger.
Endangered,
Wow.
yeah. And so that's their only food plant. This is one of my favorites. This red is what I talked about, called coral reef or queen's reef, Antigonon. It's a vine. Just everything on earth loves is just magnificent. And coming here on the road today in Tucson, we saw these Mimosa discarpa. Wait a minute, bush. We walked through and oops. No, wait a minute. They extract these cat claw things. Anybody's walked around and run into, you know what they are. But they're wonderful native plants. They keep people out of your yard too if you don't want them. these buttons too close together. There, back in front of me. This is a desert willow, which is a misnomer. It's not a willow at all. It's related to the big Noniaceae, which is a big bee flower. Tulip is a popular one in the east. Out here we have quite a variety of them. But it's a wonderful pollen source for big bees, particularly carpenter bees, bumblebees, and that sort of thing. This is an ironwood, which you can get in Tucson. You don't have them here. It's too cold. Spectacular bees. Just love these. My favorite, all-time favorite right here, which we have here in Cochise County. You have to look for them a little bit. It's called Western Soapberry. Any of you seen one of those?
So.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
robin, yeah. And they're wonderful because when do they bloom? End of June. That's the driest, most deadly time of year for everything on earth in our area. It's hot, it's dry, there's no moisture. That's when they bloom around here, just before the rains come. It's, I call it the tree of life before it became a popular term in taxonomic world, because you get everything there: flies, honeybees, beetles, wasps, butterflies, all kinds of strange things, mantispes, all kinds of wonderful things. They bloom there. There's a really huge one halfway between Patagonia and what's the town up there? Sonoria, halfway between Sonoria and Patagonia. You take this from Sonoria coming over to here, you go along that high road. I think it's 82 is the number.
82, yeah.
Yeah, if you look carefully, there's a number of these along the way, patchy here and there. It was just a wonderful plant. We planted one in our yard in Tucson, and just brings out everything imaginable. So there are lots of names. This is just a small fraction of things. So at this point, I'm going to introduce a talented member of the family, my lovely wife. She's going to take it from here.
I'm just gonna bring a little entertainment for everybody about the flower and the bee. And it is actually a Chinese minority. I don't have any of you been to China. It's a minority group. It's actually their wedding vow song, because it says when flower blooms, bee comes, and flower and bees are inseparable. And bees is born to love flowers. The flower bloom is for the bees. So, 蜜蜂和鲜花 you will hear that. 鲜花开花，蜜蜂来自。鲜花蜜蜂分不开，蜜蜂生来就比鲜花。鲜花围着蜜蜂开。
So with that, I'll shut up, and any of you are still awake enough to ask questions, you can ask me or Lee, and we can try to take a stab at it.
I got a question about swarming. Are you in greater danger or less danger if you're a traveling bunch of bees?
Well, traveling bunch of bees, the main risk would be is they get tangled in your hair. So you're in pretty good shape. It's pretty hard to get tangled in your hair. My son who's down there is in much worse shape because he's got lots of long hair. Now he's gonna kill me when I get back home for pointing him out. That's the main problem. Oh, beards, you're in bad shape for that too. Beard, they really love beards. So the main thing to do is just go down and just wait.
Are they more defensive in a swarm mode or rather than a nest?
Oh, they're totally undefensive in the swarm mode. They want nothing to do with anything except getting from A to B. And the only reason those sting is they get stuck in the hair of your head or your beard, or I hope you don't have hair in your arms so they get stuck in, but you can worry about that too. But no, they're totally harmless at that stage.
I've been told that if a bee stings you, you're more or less marked. and then all the bees in the area will come for you.
Yeah, that's correct. What they do is they mark you with this banana oil-like smelling stuff, sort of halfway between fingernail polish and a banana oil. And that gives a beacon, because bees go by olfaction. Oh, that's the vulnerable part. That's the nose of the bear or the dog or the raccoon or the beekeeper, whatever it is that's causing trouble. And they know that they can get to it. You see, if you're looking at you or me, we've got these clothes, they're hard to get through. But if you get stung on my nose, wow, there's no hair there, there's no clothes there, there's no anything there. Good target. By the way, that's the vulnerable part of the thing that's attacking you. The respiratory and visual system is what most predators use for, doing their attacking. If you knock those out, then you've won the war.
So
Yeah.
you take a shower, will that get rid of it?
Yeah, it goes away. You can take a shower or wait a couple hours before you go outside. If you have just one, you could just sanitize the area with these hand sanitizers will take care of it. Or water and a paper towel and kind of wash it, scrub it off. That should take care of the problem. Yeah, you had a question?
You had mentioned loss of habitat for bringing the bee species down in many areas. Do you know how the propensity of frequency, the frequencies that are in use commonly, our range has affected bees at all? Microwave frequencies, things like that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any evidence of microwaves. What is a big problem is lights. Because a lot of, particularly nocturnally flying insects, will fly to lights, they buzz around, get disoriented, and they die. So that's a big problem for them. Even bees, if there's I showed that prickly pear with all those nesting or bivouacking male bees. If there was a light, say a street light, 10 feet away, they'll wake up from that and fly to the light and they'll die there. So even things that are active during the day are at risk from light. So that's a big problem. We of course know about it from birds, because birds are always getting disoriented. And that's one of the main reasons we think there's so many fewer birds now than there was 50 or 100 years ago. Yeah.
You described some of the techniques that bees use for water being in the ground and how they protect themselves from being flooded out. I've often wondered, and you're an expert on ants, and ants have these semi-permanent colonies by the thousands and millions, and it rains a lot. How do they manage that?
Well, they often will just go up and get on the surface, and if they have to, crawl up on vegetation. The most famous one of all is our friends, the fire ants, which are dear to everybody in the southeast of Texas. And these things, when they get flooded, they form these big kind of balls that are floating around, and you get this flood and they're floating around. And they come,
then you're in the
oh, this is a boat, that's dry land. So you're in your rowboat trying to rescue somebody. They're all crawling up, next thing you know, you're sharing your rowboat with 20,000 or 50,000 fire ants. Not fun. So they're the ultimate survivors. They can live through just about anything. That's what most ants will do, is they'll just go up. And rodents will do the same thing. I remember I was at work one day and we got this huge runoff from an apartment complex that all flooded into our area with this nice little, I'm going to call them gopher, I don't know what they're, some small rodent that had a colony of these things. I shouldn't say a colony, a big collection of them. They were all sitting up on top of their burrows because they got flooded out. Just sitting there looking very forlorn, hoping there was no hawks or owls or anything nearby. Yeah, that's what you gotta do to get flooded. You just gotta get above the water, take whatever risk you have to do it.
Yesterday, right next to the San Pedro River, it then flooded, it's gone down. There's a colony carrying their eggs from one little anthill, tiny ants.
Yeah,
To another one, maybe only 6 feet away. It might have been slightly higher, but not
Yeah.
much. And they were transporting their eggs from one.
yeah, they'll do that. They will actually transport the queen that way, and all the immatures and the pupae. Sometimes they even carry other workers. It was more efficient for ants, for one ant to do the walking, carry another one, than it is for two ants to do walking, which seems to me like somebody's carrying me, they're doing probably more than twice the work of him and I walking alone, but apparently in ants, that's not the case. Yeah.
Anatomically, what is a bee's olfactory mechanism?
It's basically there are two systems, the antennae out here, which you see, that's the main system of sensing chemicals. The other one, they have little palpi, which is kind of equivalent to our tongue, so to speak, except it's exterior. And that's usually gustatory, so they get to a flower, they get there by the odor of the flower, then they use the palpi as they're sucking up the nectar. That gives them the flavor of the nectar itself, because the flower odor is different from the flavor of the nectar. And so they have these two systems that work together. Of course, when they're attacking us, it's their antennae, because they're not going to try to eat us, they're just going to try to sting us. And whether the palpi, that's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked that, whether they're functional and say, yeah, this is the predator, good time to sting, you know, or whether they just simply go by the olfaction of your breath and lactic acid and sweat and, you know, that kind of thing.
Justin, would you say a few words about your book, and are they available back here?
Yeah, and I have my lovely wife do that. She's better the promoter than I
And
am.
he can autograph for you in case you want one. Yeah, or for
I'll
Halloween's
scribble
coming,
whatever
it's a
you want,
wonderful
as long
book for
as it's-
Halloween.
As long as it's not profane, on a copy book for you.
It's a really good
No postage, no tax.
I'll do an advertisement for it, but it's a fascinating book, and you just can already put it down. Just what he's done and this description is worth the read.
Yeah.
I
Also-
really recommend it.
I'm sorry, I'm actually a medicine, I'm a physician. In fact, now we're using to help patients describe their pain. You know, don't just tell me 10, a lot of pain, now give me narcotics. We say, okay, tell us how they feel, what does it, you know, of course, then function. They actually kind of revolutionize medicine in that way as well. Yeah. So just FYI, so you may learn some poses.
How much are the books?
So I only have one paper copy, which is 20, and the hard copy is 25. And unfortunately, cash, or check is fine, I trust you, so.
Anything else for Justin? Or his wife? There's two
Oh.
two entertainers. Very good effort on the song.
It's the wisdom of human life, right, the coexistence, literally.
Thank you, Justin, for coming to see us.